10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 186. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 186 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. Hope you are all doing extremely well out there. Happy post-Thanksgiving Friday to everybody in the United States. Hope you all had a safe and happy Thanksgiving. Got to hang out with your family and friends. And happy Friday to you all. So a couple of items of housekeeping before we get into this week's episode. Just a reminder, you can find the PDF to this episode and every other episode that we've ever done on our website, 10minutejazzlessonpodcast.com. And what you want to do is you want to click on one of the Patreon banners, and by going over there, you can sign up for only $3 a month, showing your support in the form of a $3 donation. You get access to all those PDFs and a lot of extras that we do, exclusive discounts in the store, all kinds of really cool stuff over there. So I need to give a shout out to a whole bunch of people that have joined us on Patreon over the past couple weeks. Thank you to these folks for joining the family, showing your support, and getting all those fantastic benefits. Thank you to Nick, Joan, Ian, Paul, Frederick, and Hans. Thank you guys so much for signing up, pledging that $3 a month, and we hope you are enjoying your membership. Now, I've also decided to give a big discount to everybody this Friday, considering it is Black Friday. Sales galore everywhere you look, and there's going to be no exception to that rule here. We are going to offer you 25% off of absolutely everything in our store by using the code BF2019. So if there's anything that you've been eyeing in our store, get it today. It'll only last through the weekend, and you can get 25% off absolutely everything by using the code BF2019 on any product in the store. And that's just to thank you for supporting us and get you some new materials to work on to help your jazz playing along. All right, let's jump into this week's episode. So considering this is the 5th episode of the month, we don't get too many of those, I decided to answer a question that we got from one of our patrons, Dean. He's asked me questions in the past. We've done a few episodes on his questions in the past, and we're going to continue down that thread. I always love basing episodes off of your questions because I know that it's immediately going to help some people out there. So we were talking about enclosures with Dean in the last message he sent. And in this message, he was just asking a few further clarifying questions about enclosures that I think were really well thought out and might point to a lot of questions that you all might have out there when it comes to enclosures. So let me read the 2 questions that he asked, and then we'll answer them and come up with a strategy that we can use to help us work on this. So his first question, are there any strategies, tips, exercises that you can provide on how to pick target notes to enclose? And I think that that's a really important question because enclosures are only effective if we are enclosing the correct notes. So this one's kind of a simple answer, but I'm going to give you a couple different ways to work on it, or at least one really good way to work on it. So the answer to that question is that I'd like you to choose 1, 3, or 5 when it comes to picking which notes to enclose. The reason that we leave 7 out of there is because we want the target note of an enclosure or in approach notes to be as clear as possible. And I think, and I know that 1, 3, and 5 are the 3 clearest notes in any chord. We're going to leave out the 7 because I do think that that note is a little more amorphous. It's not as clear. Like if you think about a major 7 chord, The 7 is a really beautiful note, but it's actually a really unstable note. So we don't want to necessarily enclose that note, especially when we're just starting with enclosures and trying to work this device into our playing. So here's an exercise that you can do, and this will be on your PDF. So I'm taking the first 4 measures of all the things you are. It's just always the first tune that comes to mind when I think about stuff that I want to work on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick 1, 3, or 5 on every beat 1 and 3 in the first 4 measures of this tune. And I'm just going to go about picking them randomly. All right. And what this is going to do is this is going to give us the skeleton for our exercise on enclosures and approach notes. So if I have these notes just filled in on the strong beats in the measure 1 and 3, then I can do a whole bunch of things with those notes. But we're going to do the most important part first, which is picking those target notes. And they're all going to be 1, 3, and 5. 1, 3, or 5, I should say. So if you look at the PDF, you'll notice that I've got the first 4 measures of all the things you are just charted out, and you'll see either a 1, 3, or 5 on all of those. Now, we're going to be using this skeleton to talk about his next question. So let's talk about what notes we picked over what chords. So over the F minor 7, we picked the 5, and we picked the 3. Over the B flat minor 7, we picked the 5 and then the root. Over the E flat 7, we picked the 3rd and then the 5th. And then over the A flat major 7, we picked the 3rd and then the root. So those are all very, very extremely clear notes, and that's going to set us up very, very well when we start talking about enclosures and approach notes. So let's talk about Dean's second question. So his second question is, are there any strategies, tips, exercises that you can provide to decide when to approach from above or below? And I think this is a really important question as well. But let's talk about this for a second, because I think this highlights the difference between approach notes and enclosures. So let's sort of define those. Approach notes mean basically we're going to approach the target note from one direction, so either from above or below. Enclosures, by definition, mean that we have to enclose the note from both above and below. So by definition, with enclosure, we're going to do both. Hopefully that makes sense. So we just want to get our terms straight and understand what we're working with, because that's really important to decide what kind of exercises you're going to work on and sort of know what to call them and know what you're working on when it comes to putting in time on this. So let's do an example of both. So to answer the first part of his question, when we're working with approach notes, how do we decide whether we want to go from above or below? And the answer is we don't need to decide, all right? What we want to do is we want to get so good at this and so fluent with these approach notes that we're going to use the line that we're playing to decide whether we're going to come from below or from above, right? So the whole goal is actually not to think about that, just to naturally be playing those really important 1s, 3s, and 5s on beat 1 and 3, and just kind of follow a well thought out line through the changes. And if we happen to approach the chord tones from above because that makes sense, or if we happen to approach them from below because that makes sense, that's where our decision is being made. It's not going to be any kind of arbitrary, I always approach from above in this situation and I always approach from below. We want to work on both of them so that they're very, very worked into our playing, if that makes sense. So let's examine a couple of these. What we're going to do is we're going to use a double chromatic approach, and we're going to go through the skeleton that we made and approach everything from 2 half steps from above. That's going to be the next exercise on your PDF for this week. Then we're going to do the exact same thing, but approach everything from below. And this is how I would work on this. I would sit there and I would do both until I was really, really good at both. And that way I know when I'm playing, I never have to interrupt the line because, I can only approach these notes from below. So no matter what I'm playing, even if it makes sense to approach them from above, I have to approach them from below because that's all I know how to do. So this is going to be an example of 2 exercises that I would work on. Let's first hear the double chromatic approach from above. Okay, now let's hear the same skeleton, but with a double chromatic approach from below. So now your job is to practice both of those things to a point where you can play them really, really fast and without thinking about it a lot. And maybe you prefer the sound of one or the other, but you still need to practice both. You really, really do. That's the thing, is that we kind of handicap ourselves sometimes by practicing things, but then not practicing the obvious variant on that thing. And that's a huge hole that I hear in a lot of people's playing. So make sure that whatever you're doing, you flip it and you do it in another way. And then you're going to be ready to face whatever situation comes your way when you're actually improvising. Like I said, that's a weakness that I hear from a lot of students. And if they're willing to work hard enough, they can totally get rid of that weakness and be sort of triple threat from all angles. All right, so here's your assignment. I want you to take that same skeleton, which is on the first line of the PDF, and I want you to come up with enclosure exercises. There's going to be 2 of them. I want you to start by enclosing the note from a half step above, then a half step below, then the target note. That's going to be the first one I'd like you to do on the skeleton. The second one I'd like you to do is just to flip that, just like we did with the approach note exercise. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go a half step below, a half step above, then into the target note. So you're going to take that skeleton and you are going to work out both of those exercises. And if you're really feeling like going the extra mile, do it on the entire tune of all the things you are, not just the first 4 bars, but at least get the first 4 bars done. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go and post yourself playing that on the Facebook group, the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Community Facebook group. I want to see some videos, hear some recordings of people actually doing this, so I know that you're out there actually doing the assignments that I give you. So Dean, I hope that this answered your question. You should practice both so that you don't have to decide whether to approach from below or from above. And in the case of enclosures, you're going to do both. It just matters what order you do them in, above then below or below then above. But you're enclosing that note. And hopefully it also answered your first question. Always choose 1, 3, or 5 when you're thinking about your target notes. And thank you so much for that question, Dean. Thanks for writing in and spurring a topic for one of these episodes. I felt like this would be a good opportunity to answer his question on the 5th episode of the month, and we'll get into some new topics starting in December. All right, everybody. Hope you had a great Turkey Day. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. Get some rest. Get on the instrument. Use some of your free time to do some practicing. And we will talk to you soon. We'll see you next week with some brand new episodes. Have a good one, everybody. Oh, and don't forget that there is 25% off everything in the store this weekend by using the code BF2019. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye.